The Florida Panthers go into Madison Square Garden and dominate the New York Rangers on the night. Something that we've seen for the Florida Panthers, tilting the ice in their direction. And more importantly, they were a pretty disciplined bunch in game one.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in to this Thursday, May 23rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12, follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. So, Cats fans, I got a question for all of you. How are you guys feeling? Because with 4 days off for the Florida Panthers, it was just the anticipation was just getting real to finally get the puck to drop, and all the talk about crowd for Madison Square Garden, the New York Rangers, their power play, starting off 7-0 in the postseason. And after all that, the Florida Panthers draw first blood in the series, winning 3-0 at Madison Square Garden, a 23-save performance by Sergei Bobrovsky. But for the Florida Panthers, it was really once again tilting the ice in their direction with their aggressive forecheck, and the New York Rangers having a hard time just breaking it out of their zone too. And that's really the bread and butter for the Florida Panthers in this 3-0 win. But it is a different type of show today for this post-game edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Jacob Winans is back here on the show, but it's a Winans Wednesday on a Thursday this time around. Why did we schedule it this way? Because we had to do our crossover with John Chick of Locked On Rangers. We had to rearrange our schedule a little bit. So, Jacob, you're going to get 2 post-game shows in the next 6 days here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So, number 1, lucky you. And number 2, how are you feeling about this 3-0 win for the Florida Panthers over the New York Rangers, now taking a 1-0 series lead and starting off with the lead on the road? So the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I got to be honest. That was pretty unexpected. The Panthers are such a good road team. It wasn't a case of wondering if they could get it done. It was more so Madison Square Garden is such a different beast than the 2 arenas the Panthers have played in the playoffs already on the road. Not that TD Garden isn't a raucous environment. It definitely is, but it's a place that the Panthers are very, very clearly comfortable playing in. Tampa is a place they're familiar with. Madison Square Garden in the playoffs is different. And as a South Florida sports fan, that's not something I love to say, but it is the truth. It is Madison Square Garden is just a different animal. And you could tell because the Panthers players acknowledged it. No one hid from that. No one discussed that or tried to play it down. Matthew Tkachuk even said he knew from his dad, Keith, that you knew you made it in the NHL when you played in Madison Square Garden. And everyone took this as an opportunity to be excited about going into a hostile environment and not scared, not nervous. They were more pumped up to play in that kind of environment. And I think they played a perfect road game, especially in that first period.
Oh, yeah.
Scoring first is always huge in a playoff series, especially on the road in a place like that. You get the first goal, you immediately take the fans out of it, and we saw that right away. Matthew Tkachuk scores, the fans are out of the game, and it was quiet for long stretches. You have to do that. It helps with your communication. It helps with the nerves. Get that first goal out of the way, and you're in the driver's seat. And Matthew Tkachuk did a great job just taking a shot. It wasn't anything fancy. Comes off the rush. Panthers don't get a ton of rush chances in the postseason, but that was an off the rush shot. Used the defenseman as a screen and beats the goalie. You got to take those shots. You never know what's going to get in. And then from that point, you take an early lead, and then you just play discipline the rest of the way. Pick your spots. You take your chances. but just play really disciplined hockey, stay out of the box. And then what can you say about Bob? He made all the big saves, stopped a couple of breakaways, got lucky on the post on one of them, but I would argue that puck hits the post because Bob covered every inch of net. He was fantastic. Didn't give up a ton of shots defensively. The ones they gave up, there were a couple of really high danger ones, and Bob answered the call. So pretty much a perfect road hockey game.
Yeah, and it's basically like reassuring us about the statement about Bobrovsky just being able to stay ready with the shot suppression that the Florida Panthers do have. And you also got to think about it when with this Panthers team. Vladimir Tarasenko spoke right before the game during morning skate about need to control the emotions. Sam Reinhart spoke about the nervous energy for the Panthers going into this one, but it was I didn't even get the impression at the time that it was nervous as in like you're gonna come out and be slow and when it comes to moving your feet for the Panthers. I mean, if anything, it was the New York Rangers who were coming out a little slow for them. For the Panthers, it was really about, I mean, what at the end of the day, when the puck drops and you're just so laser focused, and even though you're hearing that crowd noise when you're just getting ready to go down and take that draw, your adrenaline's going, and just based on that noise, even when it's against you or for you, you're getting pumped. And even when you say the whole "you made it" when you go to a place like Madison Square Garden, and there was a little bit of overthinking at first for the Panthers here in the game. There was a 2-on-0 where the Florida Panthers had caught the Rangers in a change, and then Carter Verhaeghe decides to pass it instead of shoot it. I tweeted at the time, you might want to see Carter Verhaeghe be a little selfish there, but then still the Florida Panthers were still getting on their forecheck. The Rangers were a little slow getting out of their zone. I mean, even PK Subban described this perfectly during the intermission, but they're passing it very slow, getting up the ice. And by the time they get to their own offensive blue line, it's time to change. But, he's just making more like a joke out of there too. But the physicality too, the Panthers picked it up, but it wasn't any too much after the whistle stuff. Tkachuk, a big open ice hit on Vincent Trocheck to really set the tone. You spoke about that breakaway on Schneider because of a blocked shot, and it rang off the post. But also for the Panthers too, they went a stretch of once again of over 10 minutes of not allowing a shot to the opposition. 14 minutes for the New York Rangers in that second period without having a shot too. And I got for Florida, things being tight. Aaron Ekblad, we've called him out a little bit during the second round series. Great clearing the front of clearing the net front for the Panthers too. I mean, second line, the Panthers were just that was a group that was just consistently on pucks, feeding to the doorstep too for them. And also they weren't phased by the matchups too, because for Peter Laviolette's group, for the Zibanejad line, they were getting matched up for them against the Lundell line. I saw. And for Paul Maurice, it's once again for them when they're on the road. It doesn't matter what the matchups for them.
Yeah, and you made a good point when discussing just kind of controlling the nervous energy. The Panthers do that so well, especially on the road, because the system they play is so simplified. They have the skill to make those plays. They have the skill to make the fancy passes, the nice stick handling moves, the cross ice stuff. But in a game like a game one in Madison Square Garden, a lot of the time you don't want to think too much. You just want to do what's simple. And I felt like the Panthers did a really, really good job of that from the first period on, and they kind of were able to build off of it. But there's not a whole lot of thinking that has to be done. You just kind of get into the flow of the system, and if there's nothing else there, you dump the puck in from the red line and you go chase after it like a bat out of hell. And that's really what they do with their forecheck. It's there's not a whole lot to it. If there's no better play there, you dump it in and you get a forward on their D immediately. And that's really how the Panthers played the game in the first period. There wasn't a lot of east-west stuff. It was all north-south. They were quick to get to pucks, and then when they weren't getting to pucks, if the Rangers retrieve it first, they're putting a big hit on the defenseman. And you could tell it got to the Rangers a lot earlier than I thought it would. A lot of the time, those those hard forechecks and the big hits on the defenseman retrieving, you don't really see that start to take its toll until later in the series. But it wasn't so much that they were doing damage with the hits. It was New York, their D, they were thinking about it. They're getting a puck and they see Matthew Tkachuk or Anton Lundell or Sam Bennett right in their face the second they touch the puck, and they're panicking, trying to avoid that hit, and they're throwing the puck into an area they're not getting enough on it, trying to clear the blue line. Panthers forced a ton of turnovers in the first period just by pressuring the D with the forecheck, and that's what you have to do in the playoffs. You got to play really simple style, and the Panthers were really successful with it in the first period. And I think this is the biggest difference between this year's team and what we saw last year. The Panthers really they really got through the playoffs by being physical bullies, kind of. But a lot of the times they didn't have that kind of restraint to keep it between the whistles. You saw a lot of undisciplined penalties as they got into the series with Vegas, and as the stakes got higher. Yeah, you saw misconducts. You saw after the whistle stuff, and Vegas just kind of laughed it off, ignored it, didn't really participate, and got a lot of power plays out of that. The Panthers this year, they're doing their damage between the whistles. It's big hits. It's the net front, the clearing the net front. But when the whistles blow, the Panthers are baiting teams into getting frustrated, and then they're not reacting. And that's really what you have to do. Keep the physicality between the whistles, stay focused on the goal at hand, and that's what the Panthers did tonight. They kept themselves out of the box for the most part, and when things didn't go their way, there's just a sense of calmness behind the bench. You don't see big complaints. You don't see Paul Maurice flopping around like a fish, like a certain coach in Boston. You didn't see complaints about the goalie interference call. You didn't see complaints. Correct call. And you didn't see complaints, like dragged on complaints for things like Trouba cross-checking Cousins in the face, draws blood. Clearly should have been a 4-minute penalty. You don't see the Panthers throwing a tantrum about it, complaining about it, barking at the ref. It's next shift, get the puck out of the zone and rebound. And that's really how they went about their business tonight. And it was a very business-like approach, which is all you really can ask for in a game one on the road.
Yeah, and for them, it's the perfect type of road game where you're tilting the ice and basically you're left little doubt even at times when it was 1-0. But that also gives us an opportunity to transition to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss when we thought this game was won or lost and our 3 stars of the game. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off and puck drop. With Kiro last-minute deals, all-in prices and view from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA and NHL tickets. Save up to 60% off from buying tickets for sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. Zone deals, even more when you choose the section and let Game Time pick the seats. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It's the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Back on this Thursday, May 23rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition on a Thursday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where the Florida Panthers are coming off a 3-0 win over the New York Rangers in Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. So so for 3 stars of the game, for me, Carter Verhaeghe, Sergei Bobrovsky, and Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk gets that goal to pass Adam Fox, where I believe that was a shot that Igor Shesterkin didn't see, based on when the Panthers were getting out of the zone. And also for the Panthers there, they closed that gap on Artemi Panarin and there in the other end right before they brought it up the ice. And also, Jacob, what the Panthers were able to do for against that line, even when they at times where that line was getting their chances towards the end, but lots of line changes for Peter Laviolette's group, putting Phil Pedal with Mika Zibanejad there, Jimmy Vesey there for him, Barclay Goodrow going up with Vincent Trocheck. So a lot of mixing and matching there that forced the New York Rangers' hand too. Bobrovsky, not a lot of shots, but 23 saves on the night for him. And Matthew Tkachuk, the only shot on goal that he had, that was his one and only shot on goal, but he still got it through there. So Carter Verhaeghe, Sergei Bobrovsky, Matthew Tkachuk are my 3 stars of the game. How about yours?
Yeah, I feel like it'd be kind of wrong to go with anything other than those 3. So my number 1 is Bob with the shutout, of course. My number 2 is Matthew Tkachuk. I feel like he really set the tone physically and with scoring the first goal. And my number 3 is Carter Verhaeghe with an assist, but also the goal that he didn't really have to do a ton on that. Just throw it in the middle, but he gets a lucky bounce. So those are my 3. I will say a couple honorable mentions for me that easily could have been in the 3 stars. Sasha Barkov was fantastic defensively.
Yeah,
it's
top 3 on 2.
It's a broken record at this point. He gets back with the long reach, stops what looked like a pretty good golden opportunity at a goal. Gets back with the poke check, unbelievable. I saw a stat. Barkov played 10 minutes versus the Rangers' top 6 in this game. Shots were 5-1 Florida in those 10 minutes. That's just ridiculous. If you look at what the Trocheck line and the Zibanejad line have done this postseason, holding them to a 5-1 shot differential in your favor in 10 minutes of ice time, that is absolutely insane. And it's not something that shows up in the stat sheet or the regular box score, but pretty ridiculous. And then I thought Gus Forsling had a really good game. He was under a lot of pressure back there, some hard forechecking behind the net, but he made really calm passes, skated out of trouble really well. I thought he was kind of an anchor for Aaron Ekblad. They were very solid. So Gus Forsling is also an honorable mention for me.
Yeah, and 10 minutes and 55 seconds. I'm looking at it now on Natural Stat Trick. Corsi 4 was 10-7 in favor of that line. 5-1 shots for, even with the goal differential of even at 0, but still doesn't tell the whole story about what Barkov was able to do. Stop that 3-on-2 opportunity to not even allow a shot on net for the New York Rangers there on that rush. And even for it's crazy because the Tkachuk line, they got outshot, not outshot attempted, but outshot 7-6 by their opposition, 10 minutes and 54 seconds, but they still got 2 goals on the night too. So pretty awesome to see by that line about how they set the tone. Carter Verhaeghe with 5 shots on goal, Anton Lundell with 4. So we saw a little bit of a step up from Anton Lundell there once again, and spoke about it even before the series of how that line was buzzing. And even Paul Maurice said, I'll stick with it. And if I end up not liking anymore, I change it. Something to be expected now for the Panthers. And this gives us an opportunity to also go into where we thought the game was won for the Panthers. It's funny because Panthers were dominating the play. They gave a few breakaway opportunities for the New York Rangers, but it was like maybe 2 or 3. Bob, especially when Bob made the saves, barely moved too for him. There are times where you just see him move the glove a little bit. So it just goes to show his confidence too. So credit to Sergei Bobrovsky, even with 23 saves, not a lot of shots, that he's still able to be just so composed, even on those breakaways when the D is a little bit up in the play, making probably a untimely pinch for them. But quickly for this one, moment where I thought this game was won, the Panthers were pretty disciplined on the night, but when they killed that penalty for too many men on the ice, for what that's when I thought the game was won, because that was a little late in the game. The Alex Wember line, even before that penalty, got pretty good opportunities there, like 2 or 3 where Bobrovsky that was pretty much the only time he was sprawling in the net throughout the whole night, right before that penalty. So right when too many men was called and they killed it, I'm like, okay, the Panthers have this. How about you?
Mine is pretty much the same. Not that penalty kill, but the chance right before it, where puck kind of dies on the goal line a little bit. Bob is flailing around. There's a big net front scrum, and then you see the puck pop out on the side onto the back of the net, and you're thinking, wow, we dodged a bullet. At one point, I think there was a broken stick in there, and Bob lost his stick for a period of time, and he went to pick it up, and the puck was still loose, and I think maybe Truba or Schneider had it while Bob was picking up his stick. I was terrified, but a couple really key block shots, and then again, the simple play, just glass the puck, get it out of the zone, get a change. I felt like they didn't do anything risky there. They survived that scramble in front of the net and cleared the zone, and once they did that, I felt like New York wasn't going to get a better chance than that. That was their chance to tie it. It was still 1-1 at the time. Panthers survive and get the job done from there.
And on that penalty kill, I wrote this on my notes to make sure to say this. Stenlund and Eetu-Luostarinen were pinning that puck on the half wall where their skates were just in like the V position. And New York had such a hard time sticking a fork in it to just get that puck out to kill some time on that penalty kill. I'm like, man, I was just looking at that when I was watching on the television. I'm like, man, the Panthers are really feasting here and to think that
the bench loves that stuff. That gets everybody going.
Oh yeah. And the fact that the 4 shots on goal for the Rangers power play, while the Panthers, even though they had their 3, didn't look so good neither, too. That's the most encouraging thing about this win for the Panthers, too, when it comes to dominant 5-on-5 for them, and just getting and then just once again tilting the ice in their favor. But we're going to transition to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss more about some history that happened in this game for 2 superstars for the Panthers. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And there's no I in team, but there's one in Indeed. That's the hiring platform you need to build yours. When you're hiring, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for the candidates with the right skills, Indeed's powerful hiring platform can help you do it all. We streamline hiring with powerful tools that match candidates. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed match their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed US data. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer good for a limited time. Claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Third and final segment here on this Thursday, May 23rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, Thursday edition, where the Florida Panthers are coming off a 3-0 win over the New York Rangers in Game 1 of this Eastern Conference Final. So, Jacob, it's crazy because when you think about a game like this for the Panthers, where kind of spoke about for them, where ice was tilted, your discipline going when it comes to, and think about the 2 penalties that the Panthers took. A little bit of the Panthers getting a little bit tangled for them. Bennett, that thing happens when you're just battling for the puck. So I'm not going to be super frustrated about that. And then the too many men, and then able to kill that for me. And for the Panthers, you're thinking, okay, it's not going to be every game where you're probably going to be this well positioned that the New York Rangers are going to come out probably firing coming out in Game 2 and possibly use their speed to get the Panthers out of their position. So once again, a great thing for the Panthers coming out of this is very little power play time. As you know, when you advance further into the Eastern Conference Final or even the Stanley Cup Final, I mean, you really got to earn your penalties.
Yeah, and that was my biggest concern coming into this series was, can Florida stay out of the box against the Rangers power play that's really, really good. And then on the flip side of that, can the Panthers power play produce against the Rangers penalty kill that has been dominant this postseason? Believe it or not, Rangers penalty kill actually has an even goal differential. They have 4 shorthanded goals for and only 4 power play goals against. They've quite literally broken even on the penalty kill, which is pretty crazy. But I was concerned the Panthers power play hasn't looked great of late. Just make sure you don't give up any shorties. That was a concern of mine going into this series. While the power play didn't produce, they also didn't give up any looks the other way. So I guess that's a positive. Power play will have to improve to win this series. But I've been very confident about the Panthers at 5-on-5. If I look at the team still in this, Dallas maybe is an equivalent to Florida at 5-on-5, but I feel like the Panthers are the best 5-on-5 team in hockey. I really think they're tough to match up against at even strength. So I felt like if we could keep this game to even strength, the Panthers had the best chance of winning it. They did a really, really good job. Like we discussed earlier, not a whole lot of after the whistle stuff. Stay out of that. We saw Igor Shesterkin get away with a punch on Etu. No one reacts. You just move on. Don't get involved. Don't take an unnecessary penalty at a bad time. There were plenty of times in this game where things could have escalated, and the Panthers just go about their business, which is important. You got to stay out of the box. You also don't want to give a team like the Rangers any unnecessary open ice by taking coincidental minors and send the game to 4-on-4. The Panthers style, you don't want that open ice. You want everything tight checking. You don't want to give them any room. You want to suffocate their stars. I thought the Panthers did a really good job of that at 5-on-5, and staying out of the box was the key to that. The too many men penalty was a little bit frustrating because the defensemen that were changing weren't even involved in the play in the slightest. So I didn't love it, but you definitely could see that Mikkola's replacement jumps on a little bit early. Mikkola wasn't quite to the bench. Tough one to take there, but they killed that off. And we didn't see a lot of the stupid stick infractions, the trippings, the high sticks. You didn't see that kind of stuff. And that's what you want to stay away from. You can kind of excuse the Bennett penalty. They're both fighting for the puck. Panthers are desperate for a clear. He grabs on a little bit. But that kind of stuff happens. You can live with those ones. Just keep the penalty time to a minimum, and you got a really good chance to beat the Rangers at 5-on-5.
Yeah. The Rangers have killed 52 of their last 56 penalties, by the way. That's a stat
Crazy.
that I just saw. And even there was a stat even before the third period that they were scoreless. That was the first time they were scoreless through 2 periods since April 1st. So also got to look up where they last got shut out. So that's the only stat I have there now as far as the goose egg there for the Panthers. But also some history happened here for 2 individuals for the Panthers. Matthew Tkachuk, first player in NHL history to get 4 game-winning goals in his first 5 conference final games, and Sergei Bobrovsky 8-1 against the President's Trophy winning teams in his career. We speak about Tampa when he was in Columbus about that sweep, and then being inserted in game 3, and then starting in game 4 last year in Boston, and then doing this. So Sergei Bobrovsky once again coming up big in moments for the Panthers there too. So some nice little accolades there. But even Bobrovsky spoke about the win. That's just what matters for him. And hey, 902 save percentage for Bobrovsky going into this one. Those 23 saves is definitely going to help that case after all the talk that was coming his way about the lack of shots that he faced throughout this postseason. But also, Kevin Bieksa also made a point about about adding insult to injury for the New York Rangers, where the Panthers were still, even when they were up 3-0 after that empty net goal by Bennett, they were still really hard on the checks, and not a lot of the Rangers weren't really fighting back after. And even there was a check by Mikkola and no one there. And that goes with the conversation of, do they bring Matt Rempe in? And that's going to be just another conversation for the next 48 hours. And hey, speaking of Matt Rempe, someone who can annoy and the opposition, Ryan Lomberg was pretty good on pucks today too. So gotta love what we saw out of the Lamborghini. And even though he's likely not going to play every game of the series too, there's going to be likely a chance where you bring Kyle Okposo back, Stephen Lawrence. But in the little bit of what we saw out of Ryan Lomberg here, gotta love it based on a guy who just stays ready.
Yeah, I thought he was quick to pucks. I thought there was one shift in particular where he was just an absolute hound on Jacob Trouba, would not let him out of the zone. Threw about 3 hits on him every time Trouba got the puck. Also with Lomberg, you worry about his discipline sometimes. He can be a little bit of a loose cannon in there. He's so high energy, wants to make the big hit, wants to make the big play, that sometimes he'll take an irresponsible penalty. Played really, really well within the rules tonight. Did a really good job of being smart with his finishing checks, and also got to give him credit for a couple of big shot blocks. There's one late in the game. Panthers were already up 2-0. Rangers, I believe, had the net empty at the time, and Lomberg blocks a huge slap shot, pops right back up, and pursues the puck on the boards. I thought Lomberg had a good game. It's like you said, there's going to be narratives and storylines. Anytime a team in a massive market like the Rangers loses game 1, immediately their storylines, there's questions. Who can we put in? Matt Rempe is a guy who gets a lot of attention. Do you counter with Rempe? If the Rangers counter with Rempe, do the Panthers counter with size? Do you put Lawrence back in? Do you put Kyle Okposo? If Matt Rempe comes in and starts to play physical or injures somebody or crosses the line with hits as he's been known to do, do the Panthers counter with Gadjevich, who hasn't played in the offseason yet or in the postseason yet? So
Doubt it.
I'd be shocked if they did. Just that there are these storylines out there, but especially when it comes to Matt Rempe, the Rempire State Building, as they like to call him. Personally, I think it'd be funny to see Rempe and Lomberg go at it, and the identities of the fourth lines here are so different. But you got a 6'8" Rempe and a 5'9", generous 5'9" for Ryan Lomberg, a foot difference there, but very similar in how they go about their business. I think it'd be funny if Matt Rempe plays. He gets a lot of chatter for a guy who doesn't really play a whole lot of minutes. It's no fault of his. He's a young player developing, but I do find it kind of funny that for a fourth liner who plays under 10 minutes a game, we talk about him so much. So we'll see.
Like you said, big market. He got that attention. Honestly, for him, it was really why. It was because of the start, because of the fact that it was an outdoor game too. I think that has a lot to do with it. That's where about getting that start and getting the attention too. So,
and he will be a quality player. I'm not going to sit here and bash Matt Rempe. He's a rare blend of size and speed. He'll be a good player, a good bottom 6 guy. But it's the storylines are just funny when it comes to a big market like that. We'll see how it goes.
For sure. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me once again on this Winans Wednesday, Thursday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where the Florida Panthers are coming off a 3-0 win over the New York Rangers to take the first game of this 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Final from the world's most famous arena. So I'm pumped, and I'm ready to just I'm ready to just get game 2 started because it's a great to have this feeling, but also for the Panthers, you just want it to just continue and go home with some good feelings. And hopefully when the Panthers do return home, there's less Ranger blue because they're up 2-0. That's what we're hoping. But let everybody know where they can follow you online.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8. I will definitely be active there, tweeting until my next segment on here with you. And this weekend, if you don't hear from me too much during Game 3, full disclosure, I do have a birthday. That's my birthday. I've got some plans, so I will try my best to be tuned into the game. But yeah, you'll definitely hear from
me. Awesome, Jacob. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week, my friend.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows in the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steve Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.